So hopefully you're all here to learn a little bit about the Chile Agriculture and Ecosystems Study Abroad program, but that is, if not, you can learn about it anyway. That's what we're going to talk about today. So my name is Elizabeth Schumann. I am the Global Education Manager for the College of Food, Agricultural, and Environmental Sciences. And then I'll have my two colleagues introduce themselves as well.
Yes, I'm Dr. Ryan Hayden, and I'm going to be one of uh, the instructors for the course.
Hi everyone. I'm Gil Signorini. I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Horticulture and Crop Science. I'm also one of the co-directors for this study abroad program.
Yep. So Dr. Hayden, Dr. Signorini will travel with you. They'll teach kind of the class that goes along with the program. We call them our resident directors or our RDs. So if we reference that throughout the presentation, that's what we're talking about. And then I kind of stay here at Ohio State and work on the back end to kind of help them put the trip together and manage the application. So if you have any questions about logistics or the application or paying for the program, you can reach out to me as well. Kind of before we dive into what the program is going to look like on site, I like to spend a little bit of time talking about, why you might want to consider studying abroad and some of the benefits to a study abroad program. We've kind of seen some studies coming out recently talking about the the skills students gain from a study abroad and how they benefit students in kind of the career search and getting that first job. So you've got the one stat here that 90% of employers look for skills that are enhanced through study abroad. And those are things like your self-reliance, your problem solving, your global competencies, your communication skills, things like that. One that's not on here, but there was an interesting study published recently by the Forum on Education Abroad. It was a relatively small study, but they also highlighted that students that study abroad get a higher starting salary that students that don't. I don't remember the exact statistic off the top of my head, but if you're interested in that, you can email me and I'll send you a link to the study. It's also a great experience, to get connected and to meet other students on campus, to meet faculty and staff. You're going to be spending a lot of time with the group that you travel with. And so it really does help students kind of develop friendships and develop bonds with the faculty and staff and students they travel which can be great when you're looking to get recommendations down the road. Because I would bet that these two faculty traveling with you are going to get to know you a whole lot better necessarily than just somebody that you're in class with, an hour or two a week, because they're going to be with you for, almost 10 days straight. And it's a fun experience. You'll have memories you will make on study abroad that will last you for a lifetime. I hear it from students all the time coming back and talking about the experience that they had and the memories. I actually just got a phone call from somebody last week that met their husband studying abroad, and now they're going back to Prague, and they were looking to get connected with some of the staff and faculty that they met on that trip. So you never know what can happen. That's probably some parents' worst nightmare, but in this case, it will be with, another OSU student that you meet on the trip. So this program, the dates for travel that we're looking at, we would be leaving the US on Monday, December 28th. You fly overnight when you fly to Chile, so you'd be arriving in Chile on Tuesday, December 29th, and then we will leave Chile Friday, January 8th, and arrive back here in the US on January 9th. We are arranging a group flight, so that means that everybody will fly together, including your two resident directors. Everybody will leave from the Columbus airport and return to the Columbus airport as a group. So that's one thing to kind of anticipate and expect is planning to be, back here in Columbus on the 28th for that departure, and then you get back to Columbus on the 9th. Classes start again on January 11th, so you'll have Sunday, January 10th to kind of get reacclimated. The dorm should be open on January 9th if you live on campus to get back into your dorm when you return. But with that, I'll kind of turn it over to our two faculty to talk a little bit more about the course and what you're going to be learning, and just let me know when you want me to advance the slide.
Great. Thank you, Elizabeth. So as as I mentioned previously, I'm Dr. Ryan Hayden. I am based on the Worcester campus and teach in the areas of soil and agronomy at ATI. But I also have a personal interest in Chile. My wife is from Chile, and that kind of prompted me to get involved in this course. It's actually a course that was developed prior to my involvement, and I'll talk a little bit about that here in a little bit. But the course itself is really designed to help students gain an appreciation for the agricultural systems and the agroecosystems of Chile, which are really unique and diverse, as you'll see here in a little bit. Um, it is available for students both on the Worcester and Columbus campuses. So if you have friends, please, just spread the word. We need to have about 12 students to go on the course. So best way to promote it is actually from you guys. It's also available to both undergrad and graduate students. So for those that are kind of putting their fall schedules together, it does need to be a course that is part of your fall, program of courses. So keep that in mind. We'll get to those details in a little bit. Gil, do you want to take a moment to introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, like I said, I'm Gil Signorini. I'm in the Department of Horticulture and Crop Science. That is the department where this program was initially developed. It, of course, precedes my time at OSU as well. And there is actually a very cool history behind it, and we'll cover that as we progress. Um my involvement in the course, I'm originally from Brazil, and I cannot say that I'm fluent in Spanish, but I get by, and I usually manage to survive and perhaps help students if they need. But my particular interest in this program is the fact that the agribusiness sector in Chile is quite unique and very very advanced for a so-called developing country. If we could place Chile in that basket, is one of the most important partners of the U.S. when it comes to fresh produce and fresh fruit primarily. This has changed over the years with Peru gaining more momentum or share in the exports to the U.S. But Chile continues to be a flagship country when it comes to fruit production and fresh produce. Uh, of course, Chile also has partnerships across many other countries in the globe when it comes to their fruit and fresh produce, and it's not because of their logistics or not because of their policy. Is because most of their operations are not most. We can say that, but a good number of operations that we visit through this program are highly developed and worth seeing. So it connects with that. It connects with agribusiness management, which is my field of interest as a researcher, as a lecturer, and also as an extension educator myself. So I'm super happy. I'm biased about the quality of this program, and I hope you guys find this interest as we progress in this presentation. So.
All right. Elizabeth, can you advance the slide? So, as I mentioned at the beginning, this program has been developed a number of years in the past. We've got a strong, connection with the host institution, which is the Pontifical University of Chile, which is the Catholic university, and it is connected because we've got a former graduate student of the Department of Horticulture and Crop Science who was based in Worcester and in Columbus during his graduate work in weed science, who developed a nice connection with Ohio State, and he served also as the the dean of the College of Agriculture at the Catholic University there. We refer to it as PUC, or the Pontifical University of Chile, and that's been our connection there. Go ahead and proceed. So the main draw for Chile, from my perspective, is just how unique a country it is in terms of the geographic diversities and the agroclimatic zones that exist. So it's a really long, skinny country that stretches from 20 degrees or 18 degrees north, and stretches then down to 50, 55 degrees in the south, and covers several thousand miles of terrain. It stretches from the Pacific Ocean all the way up to the Andes Mountains, upwards of 22,000 feet. And in between, you've got a central valley that is quite similar in some cases to California. It's got deserts, it's got Mediterranean climate, it's got temperate rainforests, and then if you proceed down to the south, it's got subarctic and Antarctic climates as well. So it's really just quite an amazing place to look at how agriculture and the environment fit together. Go ahead, Elizabeth. So just to give you a little bit of a snapshot, in the north of Chile, you've got the driest desert in the world, the Atacama Desert, and there are parts of the Atacama that have not seen a drop of rain in more than 300 years. And if you go to the south of Chile, you've got the Valdivian rainforest, which is a temperate rainforest, and they get more than 250 inches of rain. And just to put that in perspective, Ohio, rainy as it may seem, it only gets about 40 inches of rain a year. So put that in perspective. That's a lot of rain, a lot of green vegetation, and just a unique range of climates. Go ahead, Elizabeth. So in between those extremes is the Central Valley. And this is a really unique environment that is highly suitable for a range of fresh fruits and horticultural crops. In particular, Chile is well known for its vineyards and wineries. In the area of Santiago and Valparaiso, which is where the vast majority of the population lives, you've got those vineyards, orchards, a lot of avocados, cherries, berries, vegetables. And the real target, which I think drew Gil's interest, is the fact that they are the location for a lot of the fruits and vegetables that we consume in the winter. Since they are, Southern Hemisphere, they're going to be harvesting those things out of season for us, and they've capitalized on that market. So that's really quite interesting. Go ahead, Elizabeth. So over the years, so this will be my fourth trip as part of the course, and I've been to Chile many other times with my wife's family. But in past trips, we've had the opportunity to visit the university's fruit research farm, where they have given us instruction in fruit tree propagation, plant disease research, And in particular, given the significance of the US as an export market, all of the different types of phytosanitary policies that are required for export crops. So that's been quite interesting um, to see firsthand. And so that is an opportunity that is really significant. Um, Go ahead. We also have an opportunity to visit the southern part of Chile. We don't get quite as far down as uh, the deep, deep south, but we touch the edge of northern Patagonia. And this is the region where they've got lots of volcanoes, as you can kind of see in the background there, lots of lakes. It's a center for uh, dairy cattle production and dairies. So we'll have an opportunity to study some grazing systems. Um, we'll do some hiking on volcanoes, and we'll get a chance to meet some of the local dairy farmers in that area, which is kind of interesting. It's a mix of cultures. So you've got the Chilean uh, native culture there, which is a little more, Spanish speaking and sometimes with some German heritage, but with a recent overlay of dairy farmers from New Zealand who uh, immigrated to Chile because of the climate was similar to New Zealand and favorable for dairy production and a little bit cheaper to buy land than in the island nation of New Zealand. So that makes for a kind of an interesting mix of cultures. Gil, why don't you take a moment to share a little bit about our fish farming adventure from our last trip?
That is great, Ryan. Let's do it. So if I'm not mistaken, this location was the first stop once we arrived in the country in 2023. That was the last time we ran the program. Um, this is a fantastic experience. It is a fish farm dedicated primarily to small fry. They grow trout and salmon from the eggs. And once this fish reach a specific size, they have partnerships across the industry, and they send these little fish to open water companies that continue raising this fish to final and all the way to final consumption for processing. The level this was a fantastic first stop, considering the openness and reception that we received. I can say that, Ryan. I think the folks were very open to present their business model, talk about how they do things. So it created a very, very interesting and good first experience in the sense of not only seeing different things, but also learning in depth how their operations take place, how they set up their business model, how they set up their strategies. So this took place last year, the first part of the trip 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, I should say. And it was very hands-on too. So we had a chance to walk in some of these fish tanks, uh, uh, ask numerous questions, thousands of questions to these individuals. With us in this particular visit, we had a professor from PUC visiting with us and giving additional, who could speak English fluently, of course, who could give us additional context, additional technical information about what we were seeing. So fantastic, a fabulous first experience once we arrived in the country 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah, so fish farming is it's big business there. Chile, I think, is one of the top two or three exporters of salmon to the
Mhm.
U.S. And So it's just a really important industry, and the way that they, highly manage these systems is quite remarkable. I think it's definitely a stop that we'll continue to take a look at. So go ahead, Elizabeth. Another really exciting, component of our southern leg of the trip is to our visit to Chiloé Island, and this island is the genetic origin of the potato. So there's potato species that originated in Peru and up and down the Andes, but the potato that we've come to, you know, be familiar with most in kind of modern agriculture actually originated from Chiloé Island. And so it's still an important part of the agricultural system there. Um, the neat thing about Chiloé is it's also the home to various indigenous groups. These are uh, Native American groups that have interacted with and resisted, uh, colonization over many years, and they've been able to preserve a lot of their unique uh, cultural attributes. We'll get a chance to visit one of their villages and share a meal with them and hear a little bit about their culture and history. And then also on this island, we'll uh, get a chance to take a boat trip off the coast, and you know, very common to see, three different species of penguins, um, sea lions, and seals, all sorts of waterfowl and other bird life, but a really neat side venture to see kind of that, um, you know, the ecological, environment of, the southern coast of Chile.
Another very important point to highlight there, guys. For those of you who are really considering to take part in this program, this is the Mapoche village visit is a fantastic experience. Is one of these things that connect the social aspect, the environmental aspect, and agriculture, right? So we go to visit Chile. We will take a look at agriculture operations, agribusiness companies, learn more about the environment, soil science. Ryan is with us, and he's an expert on the field. But there's also these visits that is kind of an eye opener for many other reasons. So this location that we go allow us to better understand how subsistence agriculture is. So these are family farms, and they raise and grow most of their food, uh, while maintaining their cultural heritage. Very, very well so. So it is a fantastic social component of the library, the visit, and it creates a great experience for many of us who don't have access to this type of operations or visits. So uh, it's certainly a highlight part of the visit, the program as well. So.
All right, proceed, Elizabeth. All right, so one of the areas that uh, I think is really interesting that we get a chance to dig into is the southern part of Chile, and actually throughout, the entire country. It's along the Ring of Fire, and there's more volcanoes in Chile than any other country in the world, interestingly enough. And uh, one of those volcanoes is in the backdrop of that picture, and we're actually standing on a cooled lava flow. So that's kind of a pumice sort of stone that we're climbing over. And, you know, the volcanic deposits, make for really unique soils that support the agriculture in the region. In general, they're fairly acidic. They have um, a really unique capacity to uh, store and retain organic matter. They tend to be pretty well drained because of the kind of the structure of the volcanic sand. And there are certain crops that do quite well, and there's others where they're a challenge. So uh, just kind of a snapshot of, some of the explorations that we'll do. We may try to dig a soil pit or something like that during our trip to get a closer view of that. So another key thing to highlight, southern Chile is really where a lot of their livestock industry is set up. Cattle make a big part of it. Gaucho culture, which is kind of their version of the Western cowboy, is still alive and well to a certain extent, although they do have feedlots and other more modern ways of raising livestock. Um, as you get further south and the climate becomes a lot more challenging and colder, raising a sheep is still an important industry as well. So we do get a snapshot of that. So the neat thing about this course is we cover a wide range of horticultural and livestock, production systems that you may, have trouble finding in the U.S. So that's really a highlight. All right, Gil, you want to talk a little bit about our northern leg?
Yeah, I think I can. Um, so after visiting South Chile, we have a flight back to Santiago, and from Santiago we travel by car north. We don't get as far as the heavy, hardcore Atacama, but we get to a very dry area for sure. But as we progress to that area, there are certain, well, the geography is unique all the way there, right? So we keep crossing valleys of different types. And in each valley, you see different types of operations, different types of production. Two of them that we do stop by and we have very interesting technical visits. So we plan to repeat that this time around is visiting a avocado farm. So 3 years ago, that was certainly a highlight of the trip as well, because the level of plant physiology discussion we were having at the field in front of the avocado plants was very unique. The way they were managing the plants, we discussed with the field managers uh, how they did things and why they did certain things at the plant level. So they're managing plant by plant, tree by tree. At the same time that we were witnessing a harvest process. So there were individuals or folks passing by in our group and harvesting fruit and delivering to the closest location where they had to weight their fruit. So because they were paid at a weight basis, depending on how many fruit they harvest in a given day. So we managed to witness that. We also stopped by a citrus farm. We had a fantastic barbecue lunch with them. The hosts were super welcoming and open also to discuss their business model and how they do things. It turns out that farm that we stopped by had a exclusive contract with a large scale retailer in the US. They produced those tangerines, the halos and alike. Those tangerines that are seedless, primarily for children's lunch or snacks at school. My children love them. And it was fun to see how it's grown and why they have certain equipment or installations in the operation to produce those tangerines. One fact that was quite curious for us is that the orchard was completely covered, right? So covered with nets, and was primarily to avoid pollination, as far as I understand. And I learned firsthand. I'm not a citrus expert, but I could learn from the trip myself. And there was a third location that we stopped by moving north. Was a pisco distillery. For those of you who don't know what a pisco is a liquor, a heavy liquor, if you will, very alcoholic, and it's produced is as a fermented drink produced out of grapes. Very traditional in Chile, but primarily in Chile and Peru. That's where they produce and consume the most of that. We had a chance to visit their location, but also the owner or the hosts walked us through the process of producing that liquor. That was also very unique. Most of us don't have a chance in our lifetime to see an operation that is relatively rudimentary, but you see that they are making a living out of that and taking that very seriously. So those are three locations that I remember very well visiting our last trip, moving north, all the way to a city called La Serena. La Serena is a beach town north of North Chile, where we spent a few hours there. If not, I don't remember if we spent 1 or 2 nights there, but it was a fantastic experience too. So there you go, Hayden.
Nice, nice. Elizabeth, thank you for advancing the slide. That's good. Also, while we're up there in the north, near La Serena and the Elqui Valley, we also have some opportunities to see some really interesting wildlife. We've in the past have taken boat trips there, and that is a possibility for this upcoming trip. Whales have been sighted. We've seen numerous whales there in the past, as well as more penguins and seals. One of the other really unique things about La Serena, and actually a little bit inland in the Elqui Valley, is it's one of the world's best places to see the stars. And so there's a lot of observatories in the area. Actually, NASA has one of its largest observatories there, and there's also commercial observatories. And we've had an opportunity to look through some really big telescopes to see the stars in the southern sky, which is really quite unique. Given how dry it is and how sparsely populated and undeveloped the territory is, just simply due to it being in the desert, it is a really unique place to see the stars, perhaps better than any place else on Earth. So that's neat. And then proceed.
And I can take back over
All
for
right.
a little while if you want.
Yeah, let me just make mention of this. So it is a 3-credit class, and so it is something that you're going to want to be registered for, enrolled in for the autumn semester. While we do not meet every week, there will be 6 pre-departure meetings that take place throughout the semester. We usually wait until we have folks signed up for the course, and then we find a common time that we can meet, usually in the second half of the semester, mostly, as we kind of prepare to go. So we do some academic type work just to get some context, learn a little bit about the landscape and the history of the region, watch some movies about Chile, which are kind of cool. and then just kind of get our brains working so that we have the opportunity to make the most of, our in-country, visit. It is an academic course, so there will be, some expectations. So as students, you'll be doing a journal of reflections. You'll also have an opportunity to prepare and give a presentation um, to the class on, preceding a, one of our, you know, tour activities. So, say we're going to go visit a, a avocado orchard. You might be asked to prepare a brief summary of the avocado industry and share that with the class, lead a discussion. So those are some of the things that you'll be expected to do in the class from an academic perspective. It's not the most challenging of courses. It's meant to challenge you in other ways, but it's still something that will force you to learn about topics and material that you've probably not considered too much.
Yeah. And I will add, you cannot enroll in that HCS 5797.03 course until you've been accepted into the study abroad program. So as you're working on putting together your fall schedules, if you think you're going to apply and you want to participate, just keep that in mind that you'll need to be able to kind of have the room to add those 3 credits once you've been accepted into the program. So either save space for those 3 credits or know what you might drop once you've been admitted so that you can add the class. But as Dr. Hayden mentioned, there's not a set time that the class is going to meet. So you don't have to worry about, making sure you're available at noon on Tuesdays and Thursdays or anything like that. Kind of some other things. I'm not going to go into too much detail on these next 2 slides, but this plays into that idea of how the program and studying abroad is going to help you kind of develop some life skills, some career skills that will play a part in kind of how you might talk about the program once you've come back and are thinking about how you're going to present this, for grad school or on your resume. And we'll bring in the career advisors as part of the pre-departure orientations to talk through that a little bit more. But this just gives you an idea of what are some of those skills, like, budget management. That might be a personal skill of as you're thinking about how you're going to pay for this program and what finances you already have established and in place, and what's the remaining balance that you need to be able to afford it, and what are the scholarships or other opportunities to do that, right? That's also a life skill later in life if you're thinking about, I don't know, buying a car or buying a house, thinking about getting those finances ready. And then we've got some of those, career readiness. So like networking, they were talking about, presenting on a topic, but how are you going to present yourself to these professionals that you're meeting while you're in Chile, and how are you going to, nurture those relationships and follow those up if you want them to lead to something down the road. And so those are things that we'll talk about more in the pre-departure leading up to the program traveling. In terms of housing and food, we will be staying predominantly in hotels throughout the duration of the trip, and those are typically double occupancy. So you should anticipate having a roommate throughout the travel portion of the trip. And that would be another Ohio State student that's also participating in the program. We do generally include breakfast daily once you kind of get to Chile. And then usually there's a few other meals provided. So like in 2025, we had planned for 3 additional lunches as part of the program, but most of the meals you'll be responsible for kind of purchasing those throughout the trip as you're traveling throughout Chile. In terms of costs, we are still getting the budget together for 2026. In 2025, the program fee was scheduled at $4,997. That included the airfare to and from Columbus, all of the in-country housing, those breakfasts, those couple additional meals, all of the transportation required in country. So there was a flight to get down to the south, and then the busing, all of your program activities, and then your international accident and sickness insurance. We did not include in that program fee, like getting to and from the Columbus airport, most of those in-country meals and personal expenses. So things like souvenirs, if you needed any medical costs pre-trip, your immigration costs, if you forgot your toothpaste, things like that. I anticipate we'll have similar things included and not included in the program fee for 2026. But once we get that established, we will post it to the brochure page of the cost of the financial page of the brochure. There'll be a full breakdown of the program costs, and I'll send an email to everybody that's here today once we have those updated. So you'll be able to go and take a look at that. This kind of just to give you a sense of what that out-of-pocket piece looks like. So on that cost sheet, we'll tell you everything that's billed through the university, and then also give you estimations on out-of-pocket expenses. We do estimate high in the cost sheet, and part of the reason why we do that is because in addition to it being a tool for you, it's also a tool for our colleagues in the financial aid office. They can do what's called a cost of attendance appeal for students to increase the budget of how much financial aid they can get through the university for the semester to include your study abroad costs. And so for that purpose, we want to give them the higher end of what we think students might spend. But I think the reality is students often spend less than what we put on the cost sheet. So I've tried to give you on this slide like a more reasonable estimate, I guess, of what students might spend. So, like your meals, you're probably not going to spend, $450 unless you're going out and having like a very nice 3-course meal, maybe with a adult beverage for every meal. If you just go out and get like a sandwich, or they're called completos in Chile, and they're like really fancy hot dogs. So you can go to these stands and get a hot dog, and they have all these different options of what you could have on your hot dog. If you get completos for most of your, lunches or dinners, or just get a sandwich or something like that, you are not going to spend $450 on your meals. And maybe we can come back around to that completo conversation at the end.
One of the things that I can also
Yeah.
add is Chile is a sandwich culture. And so they make really fantastic sliced beef and pork sandwiches. It's kind of a unique thing. So like at lunch or dinner, this is pretty typical. Even at my house, my wife will serve us chacareros, which are kind of sliced beef sandwiches that we'll have for dinner. And so when in Rome, do as the Romans.
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing like the immunizations. $400 is, I would say, very high. There are no immunizations you are required to get to enter Chile. So most likely, like maybe you need an update on your tetanus shot or something like that, but you're probably going to spend, you potentially could spend nothing on that. Same thing with like the personal expenses. That line item is really for a cell phone. So if you're going to spend, like $12 a day on a travel pass for your phone, you can also look at eSIM options, which can bring that cost down a lot. If you already have a passport, you're not going to need one. There's no visa required for U.S. citizens to enter Chile. So I tried to give you more of a range of what those out-of-pocket expenses are going to look like, but these are estimates, and ultimately that is going to be based on your own personal spending habits. So take that into consideration as you're trying to figure out what your in-country costs might really look like. And then kind of along those lines, there are a variety of scholarships available. So you can use financial aid towards the cost of most study abroad programs. The trick with any of our winter break programs is it's kind of an add-on to your autumn semester. So you're still paying for your full autumn semester, your tuition, your room and board. And so you're not necessarily going to see the financial aid that you currently get being used towards those costs. They're probably going to be used towards the normal costs you have for a semester at Ohio State. But that's why I want to highlight some of the additional study abroad specific scholarships that, since you will be studying abroad, you'd be eligible to apply to that study abroad specific funding. So I have a link to the full list of grants and scholarships on OIA's page, but then I also have highlighted a few. So for anybody that is a student here within CFAES, we do have scholarships that are specific to students who are studying abroad. You do need to apply to those, and there is an application that just opened last week available in Scholarship Universe. So it's a new system we're using in Scholarship Universe. So we have different cycles that match the cycles for the study abroad programs. So we just opened our winter break cycle. So if you're applying to this Chile program, which is a winter break program, you need to also apply to the scholarships for winter break. And that is going to be open through June 10th. So still plenty of time to apply. The application's really easy because instead of making you answer the same questions, we're just going to share your responses to your program application with the scholarship application committee. So it's really just checking that, like, yeah, I want to be considered for funding. It should take you 5 minutes. There's no reason you shouldn't do it. But about 90% of students that apply for funding through CFAES receive funding. So we have a really high award rate, and those awards tend to be between $1,000 and $2,000. There are a couple of different like academic enrichment grants, both through honors and scholars, if you're a part of any of those programs, or through the undergraduate student government here at Ohio State. The Gilman Scholarship is a national scholarship program for students that either receive a Pell Grant as part of their financial aid package or are the child or spousal dependents of active duty military. It is going to be a more competitive scholarship because it's a national scholarship. But if you might be eligible for that, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to sit down and talk with you and work on that scholarship application with you. The OIC scholarships it's a program for any Ohio resident. So you do have to be a resident of Ohio. It's actually managed by the University of Toledo. So you would apply through the University of Toledo, but it's open to any person that's a resident of Ohio, and they have funding that's specifically for students doing short-term programs like this program. If you did the STEP program, you can use your STEP funds for this program. So it's eligible to have that funding applied towards it. And then if you're part of one of the other colleges on campus, if you're not part of CFAES, like Arts and Sciences, Engineering, Fisher, they all have funding specifically for their students that are studying abroad. So you can look at their application process as well. And then lastly, the Office of International Affairs, their Global Education Department, also has study abroad funding. They will have a cycle that will open in September and close in October for students that are participating on winter break programs. So you just have to remember to go back and apply for that. And they'll probably send out an email to anybody that has an open application. The hard thing about scholarship funding is the timing, because you are going to you're not going to know if you've received a lot of these scholarships by the time that you are accepted into this program, and you have to decide whether or not you're going to commit. So that goes back a little bit to that, life skill you might develop about budgeting, because you're going to have to think through, what is the cost of this program? What's my budget for the program? Do I have funding and, savings that I could use if I need to, or are there other loans I could apply for if I need to, if I don't get that scholarship funding? Because you're going to apply to the program by June 9th. We will tell you if you get CFAES scholarship program or scholarships, but you're likely going to have to tell us if you're going to commit to this program or not in July. So if you commit to the program, then if you need to withdraw, there will be a cancellation fee. And so that's why you kind of have to figure out in your head what are your options for payment, and what are you going to be really excited that you don't have to tap into if you get those scholarship funds. In terms of eligibility, it's pretty open. You just have to have an approximate cumulative GPA of a 2.5, but the program is open to students of all majors on all campuses. Then there's a couple additional things like being in good standing at Ohio State. So that OIA general eligibility and conditions for participation is kind of a long-winded way of saying that you cannot be on disciplinary probation over the dates of a study abroad program. So you have to behave for the next few months, and then in January when you're back, you can have all the fun that you want. But until then, be good. And then lastly here, the application is open. The deadline is Tuesday, June 9th. That's at 11:59 p.m. So you have all day on that Tuesday to finish up your application and click submit. You can apply through the program brochure. So if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll see the Apply Now button. Click on that. It will open your application. The application is pretty straightforward. It's mostly forms to kind of sign off and say that you read and agreed to those. It's not really a personal statement. It's an applicant questionnaire. There's like 4 short answer questions. Why are you interested in this program? How it's going to help you meet your academic or professional goals? That's really what we get to review and get you get to share a little bit about yourself and your interest in the program. So you don't need to write, a huge long essay. I think there's even a character limit, but you do want to give us a good solid paragraph about who you are and why you're interested in the program. There is a $150 application fee. So when you go to submit your application, you'll need to make that payment with a debit or credit card. And then there is a submit button. So if you are applying on a phone, once you've completed all the questionnaires, this green banner comes across the screen that's like, great job, you've done everything you need to. Underneath that green banner is a submit button. So make sure you scroll down and click submit. But that is pretty much the application. And then with that, we will open it up for any questions. Or if there's any closing thoughts as well from you guys.
I do have one final closing thought. You guys are our best recruiters. So in your relationships with friends and so forth, the best programs are populated by, a couple of people that get excited about it, and it snowballs, and several of their friends sign up. And so that's something that I would just encourage you guys to do. We need a minimum of 12 students to go on the trip. We can take more, a few more anyhow. And so keep that in mind, that you can help ensure that this trip goes and is profitable for HCS if you do some recruiting to help us out. So take that for for what it is as an encouragement. I think it's going to be a fantastic trip, and if you guys have any questions going forward, feel free to reach out to myself, Dr. Signorini, or Elizabeth. Particularly on the technical pieces. So with that, I'll let you guys open things up for questions.
Definitely super interested in going on the trip. I think the biggest setback is probably just the financial burden. That's a pretty significant amount of money.